Hi everybody, welcome back to the OVACAST.
I was trying to figure out what that noise was. We're back! It
We're
was the
back.
air filter.
Back everybody. Now there was some things in the previous episode I forgot to talk about in the YouTube one. And one of them was Matt Pat and his wife. I think her name is Stephanie. If I got it wrong, I apologize. But they both retired. And they handed off all their channels to other creators and stuff. And it felt like a new age in YouTube. It felt like a new passing of the torch, and it was a lot of mixed feelings. I was happy for them. I was happy for both of them that they'll get to spend more time with their children, and they've succeeded in everything they wanted to do. They've lived the dream. They've had amazing lives, and but at the same time, it's going to be sad not to see them that often, if at all, anymore.
Yeah.
On a regular basis. And the other thing I forgot to talk about, or that happened, was Stephen Plays came up with the video very recently, and I followed him a long time ago, back when he would play Earthbound and Donkey Kong Country with his wife, and he had all these funny minecart levels that Michelle and I love. She played that with him.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how he was advised about 2 years ago that variety channels, I think it was by his channel's manager or the partner manager or something like that, and they advised that variety channels are not going to be doing that well with the algorithm. So that's just another video that came out. And then shortly after that, another YouTube video came out in my algorithm about from TDT. YouTube's war on older creators is basically like if Markiplier started out fresh today with none of his name recognition or anything, like say if he started out completely from scratch. One of their dogs coughed for some reason.
You probably could hear it. It was very loud.
But basically, if he started out today, that he might not, with the same style and everything that he did, he might not be as successful as he is today.
Yeah.
And so basically, it's kind of sad because I've watched a lot of variety YouTubers, and that's kind of the style that I wanted to do, starting from Nintendo Capri Sun way back when.
Right.
And I'm debating on what to do. I've been mostly focusing on survival crafting games with the odd Resident Evil game here, the odd cluster truck game here or there. But I might focus the channel on survival crafting mostly from now on. I still want to finish Resident Evil 4 Remake, like get everything done with it. Get all the bonuses done, bonus features, get all the playthroughs done, unlock, do 100% completion just for closure's sake.
Right.
And I was also playing Stardew Valley on there, and I kind of want to finish that too. So there's a couple loose ends to finish up, but for the most part, I want to stick with survival crafting maybe. That might be the plan going forward. But those were the previous parts that I forgot to mention or talk about, or that came out after that. And but today's episode will basically be hot takes or unpopular opinions that go against what most people think. Now, I feel this one's going to be lopsided a lot towards me because I just think differently from a lot of people, and I disagree with a lot of people on a lot of things. I have a different perspective and different values and things that go against what a lot of people think. So I feel like I have a lot more examples to say than you do, but we could start off with one that you have.
No, let's start off with you because I feel like you're gonna say something and then I'm gonna be able to play off of that.
Okay.
Cause like you're saying though, really quickly before you start, I don't have I'm trying to think of one right now and I'm like, I don't really know that that's a hot take. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. And we're not going to do ones that are too controversial or too crazy.
You never know.
There's the first one that I'm going to say is going to make people angry or people might not understand. But for me, my first hot take is the last close to 10 out of 10, arguably a Mount Rushmore candidate for Zelda games was Twilight Princess. That came out a long time ago. That one was the last 10 out of 10. It still has flaws, like the intro takes way too long. Hyrule Field is empty in a lot of parts. The Mallow Mark quest is way too tedious and takes way too long. There definitely are flaws in the game, but to me, that was the last 10 out of 10 amazing Zelda game. Now, a lot of people liked Wind Waker, and I tried to like it. I tried to get past the graphics because the graphical style, the art style, I just did not like. And I tried to watch some Let's Plays of it, but even the characters and the dungeons and everything I did not like. And then Skyward Sword came out after that. And the Skyward Sword, the story is good, but the dungeons, for the most part, except for Ancient Cistern was good. But everything else about it, the fact that you have to fight, I forgot what Demise's form is before he turns into Demise, but you have to fight that thing 3 times, and it wasn't a bad Zelda game, but it's not 10 out of 10 Mount Rushmore category type Zelda game. It's like maybe a 7 out of 10. And then there was this is where I'm gonna make people angry potentially. Breath of the Wild and especially Tears of the Kingdom were very disappointing to me. Now, when it started out, when Breath of the Wild first came out, I believed, like a lot of people, that this was going to be this generation's Ocarina of Time, that it was going to be revolutionary. And they did try a lot of new things, but the main flaw with Breath of the Wild and with Tears of the Kingdom is the developers spent so much time on the scope, the size of the world, and these gimmicks with the physics and everything, that they forgot to put memorable things and substance into the games. Like, I've played Breath of the Wild, and there's nothing memorable about it to me. It's all comes across as this big generic world with not much substance into it. And at first, when I was playing it, I believed the hype. I bought into the hype of, oh, this is going to be a 10 out of 10 Mount Rushmore type Zelda game. But what I began to realize is that they should have spent more time putting more things into the world rather than making the world big. And it becomes kind of cookie cutter in a sense. It almost reminds me of Tony Hawk Pro Skater when you put like a pipe at a certain place, the create a park mode. It's like, we have this vast empty field. Okay, put a Moblin boss here. Or put like one of those skulls here. And it feels very cut and paste. And when you start to have fun, there's moments when you start to have fun and it kind of reaches a thing where, oh, this kind of sucks. Like, you start to shield surf, and shield surfing is awesome and fun. But then your shield breaks. And that happens over and over and over, like 50, 100 times that happens. Like, you barely start to have fun with the game, and then it ruins the fun. You're climbing up a mountain, and this is fun, this is awesome, and then it starts to rain, and then you have to slip down. And then there's a lot of other moments where you're like, oh, thank God this is over. Like, there's so many shrines in this game, and none of them are memorable to me. None of them were fun to me at all. Like, there's like 120 of them. And it's like a tedious trial you have to do in order to get the heart piece that you want, or the stamina thing that you want. And I think, had they made the world maybe half as big of as it was, and just focus on making the experience more fun, it would have been a better game. Now, I know that's not the popular opinion, because a lot of people rank it 10 out of 10 and all these things. And I believe that first playing it. It took me an hour or two to realize that it's kind of like in Minecraft. When you start playing Minecraft at first, and then you're kind of fooled by the durability system, that you think there's more in Minecraft than there actually is. But without durability, the Minecraft would be much shorter than there is, and there's not all that much content in the game. And sort of the gimmicks in Breath of the Wild fool you. And I was able to forgive that to a degree, because they're trying something new. They were trying something new for the series, but where I was completely disappointed was in Tears of the Kingdom, because I had such high hopes that they were going to fix all these things. They had the world already started, and so I thought they were going to put more into that world and add more substance and more memorable moments that stood out. But once again, the new biomes that they have, the surface, I mean, not the surface, the below part, and then the Sky Islands, once again, it's very cookie cutter. Very cookie cutter. The depths below looks almost all the same. There's only 2 areas that look kind of different. It's the volcano area and then the area where the forest is. Everything else is incredibly cookie cutter, and once again, and that's one of the things that disappointed me. And then the surface, the Sky Islands, almost all the Sky Islands are cross-shaped with a launcher on it, and then a thing that can give you gadgets. And the gadgets you can make with all kinds of different stuff is not all that original. Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts did that, and it was a series killer for Banjo-Kazooie. There was Besiege that did that. So for a Zelda game, it's kind of original and different, but for games in general, it's not all that innovative at all, really. And they don't give you enough resources for that, especially in game. In game, you would think that this was one of the selling points for the game, that they would give you all kinds of stones to work with and all kinds of good capacity to craft all the stuff, but they don't really. And the other thing too is with Ganondorf in there, I was so excited that they were bringing Ganon back, and the opening cutscene is amazing and it's great. But the spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't played Tears of the Kingdom yet, they did the Master Sword awful, because you would think with everything that they did with, I don't want to say too much to spoil it for you, but you would think all the things that had to be done for the Master Sword to be repaired, you think this thing would be absolutely amazing, and it sucks. It's awful. It's got like 50 damage. It breaks way too soon. Then you have to wait for it to regenerate. You would think this thing would do 100 damage and it wouldn't break at all. And you would get it near the end of the game maybe to counteract that part. But it could have been way better than it was. They did the Master Sword really bad. And once again, the whole crafting and merging with the weapons and items thing, it's good at first, but it outstays its welcome very quickly. Everything starts to become very generic, and I've done this 50, 100 times. And that's generally what it feels like for both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Like, for example, in Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess, you come across a Lizalfos, and like, this is a big boss event, this is exciting. But in Tears of the Kingdom, you fought 50 or 100 of these things, and it's like, do I want to fight this thing to waste and degrade my weapon, or do I just avoid it? And there's so many things that you just avoid and not do because it's not fun. And once again, just like in Breath of the Wild, I would be like, oh, so many moments, oh, thank God this is over, or this I was having fun and now this sucks. Once again, they didn't fix climbing up the mountains with the rain. Again, they gave you this armor that you have to earn. You would think the hand that you have would be able to help you climb and not have to worry about the rain, but so that's basically my rant. Poor Michelle has been here for a while.
It's 10-minute rant about
But I've been a long time Zelda fan, and I've been a fan since Link to the Past back on SNES. And there was a time when Zelda would come out with an amazing game after amazing game for their main games, but to have two bad Zelda games, in my opinion, in a row. I haven't played the one with Zelda as a playable character yet, so I don't know. It looks kind of like a Link Between Worlds. Sort of that CGI cell shaded stuff, which I'm not that big of a fan of. But so I've been a fan since then, so to be disappointed twice, because I had high hopes. Okay, they started with the whole world built up, all these resources they have. Sure, with the first one, they spent a lot of time on world building and the physics and all that, but they have that down now. They should be able to use the development time that they have from the first game and make it way better for the second one, and they failed. They failed miserably. It was awful. And an example of that is Ocarina of Time versus Majora's Mask. They had 1 year with Ocarina of Time's assets, 1 year of development, and they made an amazing game, what a lot of people put on their top 10 list of the Mount Rushmore of Zelda games. For me, the Mount Rushmore of Zelda games would be Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time, maybe Majora's Mask, and maybe Twilight Princess would be my top 4. And you guys can let me know down below how I'm wrong, if you want, and that's okay. Then this is just my perspective. But I'm hoping in the future that they make one of those Zelda games again where it's actually fun and not, like I said, if they would have spent more time. I have so many memories of all these temples and dungeons, and also the music too. The music in Breath of the Wild and Twilight, and not Twilight Prince, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. It's not that good. It doesn't immerse you in the world. It's not as iconic or as memorable as the old Zelda games were. There's so many classic Zelda game music from Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, and Twilight Princess. The dungeons are memorable. I cannot remember a single shrine. There's only one shrine in Tears of the Kingdom I can remember where you were sliding on. There was a puzzle where you could slide on ice down a spiky slope, And that was the only fun shrine in the 200 plus shrines across both games that I had fun with. And it should have been more stuff like that where you had more fun with what you were doing rather than, oh, this is a tedious task. I need to get this done to get this heart piece. But that's my rant. That's my TED Talk.
15 minutes.
I'm a big Zelda fan, and it bothered me a lot. And I hope they remake the Twilight Princess on the Switch.
Here's another 5 minutes.
Switch 2 for Twilight Princess. So that I chose first because out of all the hot takes, that one kind of is the one. I'm trying to prioritize the hot takes because some of them are not as important.
You got a hot take.
Yeah. But
get rid of that watch.
Yeah, I've had this old watch where the alarm goes off
at 1 o'clock every day.
And it's going off today. But thank you for your patience. You're sitting there all that and letting me vent and everything.
I'm trying to make the dogs be quiet. I don't know why they picked a fight right underneath your chair.
Yeah. I thought about doing this rant in a more detailed way and more
detailed than that.
Like more where I write a script and I don't ramble.
You should do it for your video for your channel.
I thought about doing that.
If you guys want to check out Nick's Let's Play channel, it's always linked in the description.
I've been debating going back and forth on it on whether it would hurt because of the variety channel thing or what.
I don't think it will.
But I've been debating on doing that because I'm a big Zelda fan ever since. Like I said, I grew up with Link to the Past back on the SNES.
I have a video game hot take.
Sure.
I don't like. There's, my favorite game is Stardew Valley. That's my favorite game. Yeah. There are things about Stardew Valley I don't like.
Well, what are some of those things?
But first and foremost, I do like Animal Crossing. I don't like that it's real time.
That is awful, yeah.
Nick hates it. I can kind of deal with it, but there are things where I'm like, okay, I wish it could be like Stardew Valley. Like, let's go to sleep, and when you wake up, like, you know what I'm trying to say? Go to sleep and wake up, it's the next day.
Yeah.
They don't do that on Animal Crossing.
Because it's tied to real time, it's almost impossible unless you do some type of hack to catch up.
There is hacks.
To catch up to where someone else is. Like, say someone started off 2 years ago. It's almost impossible to catch up to them ever. Because
not only that, not even just that, though. It's like, okay, this building is going to take 2 days to be built. And then you're like in Stardew Valley, okay, your barn or whatever you buy from Robin is going to take a couple days to be built. And then you go to sleep, wake up, go to sleep, wake up, don't do anything, and it's built. You can do it in like 5 minutes. Or less than that, really. But with Animal Crossing, it's like you literally have to, it's forced longevity of a game is what it is. Yeah. They're trying to make it take as long as possible so you keep playing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a big fan base for Animal Crossing. A huge fan base. And then in Stardew Valley, the one thing I'm like, and it doesn't really bother me that much. I can remember bothering me more when I was first playing it, is having to meet everybody in the town is a goal. Like, having to introduce yourself to everyone. That part was irritating to me. Because it's like, I get, okay, have to introduce yourself to all the eligible people on the eligible bachelors or bachelorettes on the island or whatever. That I understand. Because you got to marry somebody eventually to get perfection, right?
Right.
But why do I need to introduce myself to frickin' George and Evelyn? They are useless to me.
Yeah.
Evelyn sends me cookies occasionally, but it's like, you know what I mean? Why am I, you get what I'm trying to say, though? And I feel like that's also, like, and it's the things I don't like about Minecraft, like you're talking about, is, like, I don't like that the stuff breaks. They could have made it like, okay, this kind of axe, like they do in Stardew Valley, this kind of axe only breaks this kind of wood. You have to upgrade this axe to this axe to break this kind of wood. Like they do in Stardew, like to break the stumps and stuff. They could have done that in Minecraft without having your freaking axe break in the middle of chopping down a tree. Right.
Getting the axe the second time, and even more times after that, is nowhere near as fun as the first time. And if you outstays its welcome very quickly. Like, once you start doing your 20th axe, you're like, I'm just tired of doing this.
This is stupid, yeah. And
Sorry.
Didn't they bring in enchantments at some point where you can like make it indestructible or something?
There's enchantments you can increase the durability, and there's repairing ones that will use XP to repair it, which again is still too grindy to do.
Yeah.
There are other games that find better solutions. Terraria is one of the best, if not the best, survival crafting game of all time due to the amount of content that it has and the lack of having to repair stuff. Now, some people don't like the 2D element, and they think Minecraft is better because of the 3D element, but
I can't stand it, so...
But that depends on your perspective, and it's very subjective. It's like a lot of stuff we're saying today.
Yeah, everything we're saying is subjective.
But, and then there's also Valheim, in which you can repair stuff at a workbench, and then it can be new again. And so I think Minecraft deserves a lot of credit for being the first survival crafting game that put it on the map in such a big way. It's a cultural phenomenon. It's in all different places throughout the whole world, and it put that genre on the map. You could argue that without Minecraft, there might not be Terraria, there might not be Valheim, there might not all be these things. But it's kind of like the original wheel is still not as good as the future wheels, and that's how it's supposed to be. And just Terraria did not invent the wheel, and neither did Valheim, but they made the wheel better. They made the wheel run better. They made it more fun. Oh, the other thing I forgot with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom that I meant to say is that the temples in there are also very bland and generic and not very cookie cutter and not all that interesting and not very memorable. Whether it's the theme songs, the designs of it, I can't remember hardly any of it. I know in the Breath of the Wild, almost all of them were basically like big shrines. They were all mechanical. And then in the second one, the only good, decent temple that was there was the Lightning Temple, and it was bland and boring and awful too. Like there was, when you're in Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess and Majora's Mask, you feel kind of with the music and the atmosphere of the place, you can kind of feel immersed in that world and feel the history of that temple and just be caught up in all of it. But in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, there's none of that. It's like I just see this generic place that doesn't seem to have any history to it and seems completely boring, and I have to do these things to finish this game, and it doesn't have it's nowhere near as memorable, and it's nowhere near as good as the other ones were. But that's the last part of that. I just forgot to say that.
Sure. I didn't want to. We've heard this like 4 times.
I did not want to say it like in the next podcast. I forgot about, because I do that sometimes. I forget. So, but are there any other hot takes that you have that you can think of?
I don't think that anybody should be taking book, because I read a lot. We all know this. I don't think anybody should be taking book recommendations from anyone, because here's the problem. Okay, I have a couple of hot takes on this, but you take a book recommendation from somebody, and then I will see it on TikTok, I see it on Facebook, I see it all the time. I don't know why I read this, because you guys had me read this and it sucks. Well, that's because reading is subjective, right? I have books that I think are the best books ever written that people would probably be like, are you effing kidding me?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I also see people suggesting books all the time that I'm like, why would you suggest that to people?
I can think of one that comes up again and again in TikTok, and it annoys. I don't know if I should say the name. If you want to say the name,
no, go ahead.
It's the Zodiac Academy series.
Oh my God.
I know that comes up a lot, and it just annoys you, because to you it's just smut and stuff, right?
Well, this is the thing with the Zodiac Academy series. First of all, I read the first 3 from Zodiac Academy, and then I was told you need to switch over to Ruthless Boys. I read the first, 2, maybe the first 2 of Ruthless Boys, and then I tapped out. Because here's the problem. I don't mind there being spice and smut in a book. I have no problem. I read Elsie Silver. You have read some of the scenes. It's nothing but cowboys having sex with women.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? But if there's going to be spice and there's going to be smut, there has to be a plot.
Yeah.
I need a plot. I can't just sit there and read porn. I'm sure there's people that do enjoy that, and that's fine. If you're reading, that's all that matters, as long as you're reading. But I can't do smut and spice with no plot.
Right. There was stuff in Fourth Wing and Onyx Storm, not Onyx Storm, Iron Flame, that had that
has
spice, but it has a plot to it, and there's plot reasons why the spice happens.
Right,
It's not spiciness for just to be spicy. It's
right.
It has a purpose.
And I feel like in Zodiac Academy, there was certain times I'm like, this is purely just to have this scene in here. And we can talk about the whole exceptions for this one person, because a lot of fantasy books do that, and that's fine. But I feel like Zodiac Academy did it just to excuse,
right,
like certain choices and stuff.
One of those exceptions is like an Onyx. I mean, the Fourth Wing.
Jeez,
when
Nick.
I'm getting things mixed up. I'm sorry. In Fourth Wing, when Violet is the only one to have 2 dragons.
Right.
And there's exceptions like that in so many stories where the protagonist is the only one that can do this one thing or have that one ability or have this one circumstance that happens. Everyone else, Harry is the only one that survived Voldemort and that type of thing. You know, there's only the protagonist can do this thing.
And I mean, I realize that there's a lot of books that you do have to suspend your disbelief a little bit. And I noticed that if you have not read the Elsie Silver series, you guys, I'm about to talk about book 4, so just fast forward a little bit. But there's a part in book 4 where, you know, our main female character, Winter, has a baby, and the baby is from a one-night stand she has from a family friend of her sister. Her sister's husband. So, like, her brother-in-law's family friend. Very close family friend, right? She has this baby. How does he not know for over a year? They have family dinners every Sunday. This man literally works with her brother-in-law. And he's like, Winter had a baby? Like, what? It's like 18 months later, and it's like, or 15 months. Like, how do you not know? So I had to, like, suspend my disbelief in that because I felt like you would know. Like, for instance, Connor's dad, one of his nieces that I've never even met gets pregnant. He tells me about it. You know what I'm trying to say? So it's like, you would think that this person that she had like a one-night stand with, and they know that she left with him from the bar that night and stuff, nobody thought to tell him that she was pregnant at some point. He can do math. You know what I mean? Like, and that to me, I did really enjoy the book, but I did have to suspend my disbelief a little bit with that one. Because I was like, this doesn't, and a lot of the reviews on GoodReads said that a lot of people said the same thing. And they downvoted it for that. And I didn't do that because I thought it was a good book. But that's the thing, is sometimes you have to just suspend your disbelief with books because you're just like, okay.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to do it to such a degree that it takes you out of the story.
Yeah, that's when I can't do it. With this one, I was like, well, maybe they never brought it up. They're guys. Maybe they just don't talk. You know what I mean?
You have to come up with answers to
things. But, like, trying to suspend your disbelief with, for instance, Zodiac Academy. Like, oh, these are the only 2 twins in the whole history of forever that have ever... Like, how did they get to be 18, 19 years old and not know... that they have these elements and they're supposed to be going to this completely other... They're living in the real world. I don't know. And it's like, you read the books, it's like, this is a ripoff from this. Because it kind of felt like the same situation as Clary in Immortal Instruments. She lived in the real world too and didn't know that there was a whole other...
Harry Potter, yeah.
Not Harry, Clary.
I know, but I'm saying
yes.
Example.
That is another example. I'm sorry that you misheard me. I'm like, no.
Harry, not Clary.
Clary, not Harry, honey. But yeah, it's just, and I think that's an unpopular opinion because I know Zodiac Academy is a very popular book. Like, a very popular book series. But it's not the most well written. I just watched a YouTuber who read the first one that was like, yeah, I'm not reading the next one. Like, the first one was really hard to get through. But I got to book 3. All the way through book 3 before I was like, yeah, I'm good. And I've even toyed with recently trying to read the next one.
Of Zodiac again?
Yeah, but I was like, I just don't want to waste my time.
No.
There's too many books in the world.
Way too many. There's probably so many video games and movies and books that even if you had all the time, you didn't have to work or do anything else, you could just read or play video games. There's just not an there's only so much time and so many things to do. There's just not going to be
unless
able to
you're
do it all.
constantly. See, this is the thing too, is, and I think this is another unpopular opinion. I think that when you're reading a book versus when you're listening to a book, you should have to signify what you're doing, because I think a lot of people like on GoodReads and stuff see like, oh, for instance, I'll use your name as an example. Nick's read 1,000 books this year. Like, wow, I'm reading only 50, and that's horrible. But it's like, Nick is listening to 950 of those is an audiobook.
Right.
And maybe he has the audiobook on while he's sleeping, and he counts that as, what I'm trying to say? So I think that you should have to specify whether you read the book or just, if you don't want to, whatever. But in my opinion, I specify. I listened to this book. I read this book, or whatever I do a majority of. Like with the spell shop, I listened to a little bit of it, but I read like 95% of it. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Because people do compare themselves, even though you really shouldn't. They do, and then it's like,
comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah, like just enjoy how I don't care if you want to listen to all audiobooks. I like audiobooks too. Can't listen to smut ones on audio though.
It feels extra awkward.
It is so awkward. Nick can't even read them. I can read them. Nick doesn't even like read. He was reading one the other day. He's like, Jesus.
I feel like I'm accidentally intruding on someone's private moment. Like I'm being like
they're real people.
Yeah, like I should not be seeing this. I should not be.
Yeah.
It feels awkward, Like I know these people are fictional, but it still feels that way. And that's the other thing is people say, oh, it's not real, so you shouldn't feel the X, Y, Z. But that's the point of story. That's one of the many points of stories and of entertainment is to immerse you in that world, to get you to feel feelings, to take you on that journey, take you on that adventure. And then just because it doesn't resonate for them, and then they'll be like, oh, it's just made up. You shouldn't feel like this at all. And that's the whole point.
But and I agree with you. So. But I think the people that enjoy stuff like that are the people that think like that.
Yeah.
Because there's people that really enjoy like Haunting and Hunting Adeline. They thought that was the best book. They want a man was like Zayd, and I'm like.
You told me some of the stuff in that book. It's incredibly dark.
Here's the thing with that book series. This is literally just going to be about books and video games. This entire thing. Here's the thing about that may be an unpopular opinion. I feel like when you write, and I actually saw a TikToker say something about this the other day. You write stuff like that, and that's fine. Like you want to write a fictional story where a man R-words a woman with a gun, fine. But here's the situation, though, is I feel like in the end, there should be some kind of consequence for that.
Right.
That's illegal in real life. Like, you know what I'm saying? And I realize this is fiction. Right. And I read them, too. But at no point as I'm reading this, I think, people are like, oh, I wish I could have a love like that. Do you know how this started? Did you read the first book? I realize in the second book he saves her and all this stuff, right? I realize that. Spoiler alert. That in the second book he kind of, I guess, redeems himself. By but it's like, yeah, but that guy was stalking her and killing people that touched her, and
it's weird because there's some people that say, oh, 50 Shades of Grey, I want a man like that.
No, you don't.
If the guy was poor, probably there wouldn't be anyone near as interested in him.
But
I think it's the power thing.
Here's the thing too, I feel like. Put yourself in that situation. All these people that are saying, oh, I wish I had a man like Daddy Zayd. Put yourself in that situation, really.
Yeah. You
go out to a club one night, and you're having a good time, and some guy decides that he's going to take you home. Right? Which is a natural thing for two consenting adults. She was consenting, he was consenting. She takes him back to her house, he gets handsy, she tells him he needs to leave. Okay, fine. Right? He leaves. The next morning, you wake up and you go downstairs and his hands are in a box on your front porch. And you're getting a text message. If you let anyone else touch you, their hands are going to be on the front porch too. put yourself in that situation. You're telling me you're going to be like, you know what I mean? Like, you would call the cops. You would be freaking out.
I think it's one of those things that fiction is, you can live vicariously through it without a lot of the risks and the dangers that if you were in that situation, you would be panicking and freaking out. This might not be the best example, but I remember seeing Mission Impossible 2 a long time ago, and there's that scene where Tom Cruise is climbing the mountain with no wires or anything. And he jumps from one mountain part to another mountain part.
Right.
And it's the type of thing when I'm watching that, it's great to live vicariously through that character in that moment and imagine what it's like without a lot of the risks.
Yeah.
But if you put me up on a mountain,
I'd be crying.
I would be deathly terrified. I would fail that jump.
You would be white knuckling.
Yeah. And it's not the best example, but I think in a lot of ways in fiction, that's what it's like to go on that journey without a lot of the risks and negative aspects.
But the thing is for me, it's like, yeah, I get that. Like, I read the book. Like I'm saying, I read the book too. They were okay. But then it's like these people get tattoos of it, and they get, you know what I mean? I'm just like, I get being a fan of something, but that seems like a weird thing to be like diehard fan of.
Yeah.
In my opinion. I know it's a very popular book series. Like I said, I read both of them too.
But that's why this is a hot take, because
a
lot of people like...
I just felt like... I feel like sometimes with these books, they're pushing the envelope just a little bit too far.
Yeah.
They're trying to one-up themselves. It's the same thing as you've said with, like, YouTubers and stuff. Like, how far can you go? Because you keep going farther and farther and farther. The next step is death. You know what I mean? Like, you can't go farther than this. Like, eventually, you're going to run out of farther places to go.
And speaking of heights again, it's like some people go on the tall buildings and do crazy stuff.
Yeah,
like
and they fall off.
And hold on with one arm and stuff and all kinds of stuff like that. I've seen them.
Yeah, but it's like with the books and stuff. It's like, I like reading a dark romance just as much as anybody else. But it's like when you read things and it's like, oh, you know, they're gonna there's accidental cannibalism in this one, and there's like, you know, it's like, why is this hot?
Yeah.
Like, I get it's an interesting, like, if you were to say this is a crime story and took all the sex scenes out of it and the love interest completely, this is a crime story, read this book. If it was the same book, but they don't fall in love and it was just you following this woman through her life with this stalker.
Right.
It would have been, and following through his life where he's this total, like, he's a stalker by night and this, like, hero by day, and you're following their lives simultaneously, and they never fall in love, and they never, you know, and he never wants to, like, please, if you have not read this book series, he never wants to, like, with her.
Yeah.
Or any of this. If we never had that part, it would have been a good book. I would have given it 5 stars. Take my money. I want the special edition. But the problem is when you start getting romance and love into it, that's not even remotely realistic. And I know it's fiction. I know it's not supposed to be. But you know what I'm trying to say?
Right, and some people say that with Harley Quinn and the Joker, too, where this is a messed up relationship. This is not an ideal that you should be
emulating.
Going for.
And I think that's the part that worries me, is people trying to emulate this kind of thing. Because we see a lot of crazy stuff, even now, like in the news and stuff. You see a lot of crazy shit.
Yeah.
And it's like, you think that stuff's crazy? You should read some of these books. You know what I'm trying to say? Yeah. Seriously. No, that's why I've been trying to get more into, like, granted, Frida McFadden's she's got some crazy shit in her books, but she doesn't have sex in her books, first of all.
Yeah.
The ones that I've read. That's why I read more, like, romance or crime.
And not
the two together, because I can't do it.
Right. And the other thing I see that you do, and I do the same stuff, sometimes something is so dark that you need to follow it up with something light.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
So you'll read a cozy mystery novel after reading a crime one.
Yeah, or like I'll read like a thriller, like a Frida McFadden thriller, and now I'm reading an Elsie Silver romance, and I'll just go back and forth because they're not as dark. The thrillers really aren't even that dark. But although the one yesterday kind of was, but still, you know what I'm trying to say? It's like, that's what I don't get. It's like, I don't get this. I guess there's a place for it. But like I said, this is just our opinions and our hot takes. I don't get the fascination with, like, there's for instance, the book Credence. I've never read it. So whatever I'm going to say is things that I have seen. There's like uncle, and he's not her real uncle, but like a niece.
Adoptive uncle.
Yeah, like, and they're going to have sex. And it just...
yeah.
Why are we doing that? Like, I don't know. I had a problem with it in Immortal Instruments too.
Yeah.
You know I did because I brought it up every freaking book.
Yeah, it was one of those things that felt really awkward.
That was awful because not only that, they're teenagers.
It got played twice too. The same idea got done twice in different ways.
And it's like, it's okay, like, okay, I get it. But at the same time, it's like, oh, well, who cares? No. If you really think your sibling, somebody cares.
Right.
You know what I'm trying to say? No. Like, that was, and those books are YA. That's the other part that kind of, these were not meant for 18 and older to read. These were meant for, like, high school and younger.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's just one of my things. Is I need my, if it's going to have spice, it has to have a plot. And I just don't like the really, really dark stuff.
Right. Are there any other hot takes that you?
I can't think.
I can think of that all that stuff was kind of heavy, so I want to do a light one to balance it out, kind of like you do with the books.
Yeah.
I think RC Cola is better than Pepsi and Coke. I thought that when I was a kid, and I think that way now.
You know what I think?
Better taste to me.
You're wrong. No, I'm kidding. I like Diet Coke. It's my favorite.
I've never
I drank a Pepsi today.
It'd be interesting for you to try Diet RC. Now, RC is difficult to find because unfortunately it's didn't win
one of the bigger
versus
ones.
The other two. But out of all the colas, I think I like. Out of all the sodas, I think ginger beer is my favorite, especially Bundaberg. But I don't drink soda all that often anymore. But
unless it's a diet ginger ale fruit splash.
That one.
When you were drinking one like every night there for
that one
a
was
while.
Pretty good. I think that one goes up there with ginger beer for my favorite.
Yeah.
That and RC Cola. But that's kind of a light, hot take that I think RC Cola is better than Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Now, it's not really that much of a deep thing, really.
I'm trying to think of what else is a hot take. I don't know.
Well, I got a couple more, but if you think of one...
I'll say something.
The other one is there's an old moral story, the tortoise and the hare.
Yeah.
And the whole moral was, slow and steady wins the race. And that always bothered me because I don't think it's accurate. I don't think that's why the tortoise won. I think a more accurate moral would have been steady work beats lazy talent. Should have been the thing that should have been the moral of the story.
Right.
There's more than one moral to begin with, but if you had to come up with one, that would be the one, I would say, to replace it, because the tortoise could have been slow and steady, but if the hare didn't underestimate the tortoise and actually cared and tried hard, it would have easily beaten the tortoise whether it was slow and steady or not.
Right.
I think there's other morals to the story. No matter how matched you think you are, try your best and finish the race. Never underestimate your opponent. Never rest on your laurels thinking that you're just so much better than the competition that there's no way that you're gonna lose. And it's sort of the underdog story, and I like the underdog, and that story has always resonated with me because there's times where someone's smarter than me, more capable or whatever, and I'll just try my hardest and steadily work hard. And a lot of times that's carried me through a lot of situations. Mm-hmm. But I think that's one of the other hot takes is that they really messed up with slow and steady wins the race. It's steady hard work beats lazy talent, which should be the thing that replaced them.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And then I have another one, and this is a wrestling one. I think the American Badass was the best version of the Undertaker, just because he was able to communicate a lot through his body language, but I just like that version of his character better when he could do better promos. His entrance was better. Like, there's a couple times in his Dead Man entrances where I would get goosebumps and shivers, and I can only imagine if you're in the audience. But you can only do that so many times where it's not as interesting anymore.
Yeah, we need to change it up.
And I like the American Badass. Big Evil was the heel version of that character. I like that version of the Undertaker better. And a lot of people who complained about that didn't like the character, said it was generic, and you can see a lot of big, scary bikers around, and that was a common thing to see. But I think that's what made it also more relatable. I haven't ever seen a 6'11" mortuary worker that's dead, and but I've seen multiple times in my life a big, scary bike guy.
Yeah, my dad was one.
Yeah, he was a biker. Yeah. And that's more relatable to have. But I know a lot of people don't like the American Badass version of The Undertaker. And I think what Mark Calloway said about that character was accurate. Is during the Attitude Era, that the Dead Man character would not have survived, because back then you had to talk more often. Before the Attitude Era, you had these larger than life, almost cartoonish characters. And the Dead Man fit within that time frame, but in the Attitude Era you had the more gritty, realistic, trash talking type of stuff, and you needed someone like the American Badass to fit. And that's where the tributes to Mark Calloway's talent was. He was able to adapt throughout all the ages and change that character up. But I still think that was his best work, in my opinion, as far as the characters, the versions of the characters that he's done throughout the years. That was the best one.
Yeah.
Do you have any?
No, go ahead.
That's like I said, it's going to be lopsided towards me, because there's just the other one I think is, rather than making so many sequels and so many prequels and remakes and all this stuff, they should do alternate timeline movies. And
oh yeah, like those books you like.
There's these books that we want to read together. They're Disney ones. It's basically like alternate timelines that change the whole course, the whole story. Like, we want to read Sally's Lament, where Sally finds the Holiday Lands rather than Jack.
Right.
And I think there's so many movies that could be redone. And I think with AI coming up and Sora and all these things, that eventually, when movie making becomes extra cheap and easy by just anybody to make them, we can come up with all these alternate timelines in movies. Like, what if Sonny and The Godfather, I don't want to spoil things too much, but there's different things in The Godfather that happen where a certain person dies, or a certain person tries to betray this person. And what if those things didn't happen? How would the rest of the movie go? There's Star Wars theory videos out there that talk about, what if Anakin didn't turn to the dark side, and how would that play out for a whole movie? You could make so many movies just on alternate timelines of where critical choices are made, and the whole pathway is very different, rather than making the same movie 2 or 3, 4 times and making the sequel where it's not as good as the first one, and that type of thing.
I think the Beauty and the Beast one was, what if Belle's mother had cursed the beast or something like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of
it's like so interesting too, because you wouldn't just have to be like, what if Belle was the queen and the beast was the, you know what I mean, like to switch roles or whatever. Like with the Sally one, you could do a million different things. What if Oogie Boogie was the Pumpkin King? Right. Like there's like all these different things you could do with it, and it would be so interesting, rather than Shrek 7.
Yeah, there's 7 Shrek movies. How many fast?
Is there really 7?
I think so.
Oh, I was
There's
guessing.
nearly 7 of them.
There's a lot.
And it starts out far too often where the first one, second one is great, but then they rush it. And the person who originally did it, they don't have as much inspiration as they.
Not only that, but they stop. Sometimes they stop doing them. Period.
Yeah, and there's some things that is great just to have one of, like Princess Bride. Princess Bride was great. Princess Bride does not need a remake. It does not need a sequel. It does not need anything. Princess Bride is great the way it is.
They should have never redone Aladdin. I will die on that hill.
Yeah.
They should have never done a live action of Aladdin. No. Robin Williams as the genie was chef's kiss. If they were going to do it, they should have redone it live and CGI'd the genie with his voice.
They could have done it that way, get permission from
his family.
From his family.
Because there is no other genie.
that's one of the other questions with AI and controversies is the ownership of one's likeness and stuff like that. Like there was a commercial with Audrey Hepburn where he was used her likeness and everything with AI and stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And who knows, like we could have movies 30, 40 years from now that have like Brad Pitt, or could be gone, or Clint Eastwood, or whichever actor you can think of in your head, that if they sign their likeness away, then they could be in movies potentially forever.
Because it's getting better. Like there was a TikTok the other day, a Fourth Wing TikTok, that was like, is this CGI? Remember I asked you? I have to like ask you, is this actually CGI or is this people? And you're like, no, because the way they talk and stuff, you can kind of tell.
Yeah.
You're like, no, it's AI, not AI. CGI, AI.
AI, yeah.
And you're like, no, it's AI. I'm like, oh, but there's some that you can't even tell.
Yeah.
And it's going to just get better.
It's going to get better. A lot of people will point out, okay, this looks ridiculous. I can tell this is AI. But this is the worst it's likely ever going to be.
Right. It's only going to go up from here.
There's so many things that have humble beginnings that if you looked back from what it is now to where it started, like TVs, for example, or black and white TVs, and they were big and bulky and thick and had all these problems.
$2,000.
And now you have 4K, 8K OLED TVs. If you do the comparison, it's like that, but with AI. It's in its early stages. It's still getting better. And someone will look at the Will Smith AI one where he's eating spaghetti and it looks all weird and wonky and not quite right. That's just the beginning. That's just the starting point. It can only get better from here. And but that's another hot take. A lot of people see this stuff with AI like ChatGPT and all this stuff, and they think, oh, I can't do all that much right now. That's the starting point.
Yeah, this is the worst it's ever going to be.
It's like with cassette tapes versus CDs versus MP3 players, and now you have phones that can play music for you. And It's if you're like to look at cassette tapes when they're first starting out, you're like, oh, or even record players, or before that the phonographs, all this stuff. Yeah, it can only get better from here. Yeah.
I mean, look at video games.
Video games.
First you had cartridges, then you had CDs, then you had... Now you can have nothing.
Yeah.
You have how many different kinds of cartridges? You had Sega, you had Atari, you had Nintendo cartridges. PlayStation was a CD. But you know what I'm trying to say? Yeah. And then you went to, okay, now there's discs. Well, now the games are about the size of a freaking quarter.
On the Switch games,
like with the Switch games, those are tiny. I swear to God, they hope you're losing them. Oh, you gotta buy it again. You know what I mean?
It's so funny, comically, compared to the case versus the actual size of the game.
It's like teeny tiny little game, and now you can just download the game. Which people are getting mad because I guess they're removing books from Kindle and they're just taking them off.
There's that,
and that's what you've talked about, is the whole thing of, oh, they're going to be like, oh, you got to buy it again. Oh, you got to buy it again.
Yeah, you don't own them anymore. That's one of the big differences between the other revolutions that have happened before with media, because they've all been physical up to this point for the most part. Like even going from tapes to DVDs, it's still physical. Even from going from VHS, like not the tapes, the music tapes, to CDs, and now
cassette tape.
For the most part, it's been physical stuff that you can still physically have, and they can't take it away from you. But now with digital, it's just easy for them just to be like, nope, you have to pay a subscription fee to use all these games, and if you don't pay the subscription fee, you don't. And people could have backlash and boycott and do all these things, and how effective that could ultimately be, I don't know. But it's still a concerning thought that you won't own these things anymore. And that what a slippery slope that could be to other facets of life beyond entertainment, beyond anything.
I just realized that my computer doesn't have a CD drive.
Yeah, mine doesn't either.
Yours
I had to
does.
Get this current one does.
Yeah, but that's a change too. Because before, when we had not these computers, but the ones before, or no, wait.
This one has it right.
Does it have two of them though?
No, just one.
I had a computer that had two. Like one to put it right onto the other one. You remember how you used to do music or whatever? Anyway. But I've had ones that have 2, and then I had the one before this that had the 3.5 disc. I remember the computers. Now I'm really aging myself. That had those really big plastic ones. Do you remember those?
The really big floppies, and then there are the smaller
They're like, ones. Yeah, but you remember the big ones that were black, and they were literally like hard plastic.
Yeah.
Do you remember those or not?
I remember that. I remember there was the one with the metal thing that would slide over.
Yeah, that one, but it was the one before that.
And I would play with that, like I would pull it back and then it would spring back. Yeah. And I kept doing that over and over. It was like a fidget toy almost.
Yeah, but do you remember the ones before those?
Those were like this big.
They were literally the size of probably, I don't know, a dessert plate. I mean, they were big.
They were pretty big, yeah.
And they were, and my favorite game was on that. That Mother Goose game.
Mother Goose, yeah.
Was on one of those. And my mom used to put little tags on it and write the name of what was on it.
It's so funny how looking back, the stuff that you thought was really great at the time, and in some ways it still is, but you go to an ad from, there's some ads I've seen back in 1999, what a $1,400 computer would be, and it's dwarfed by what we have now.
Oh, yeah.
It's completely like, it's like a minnow compared to a shark in terms of comparison to what it can do. And I can only imagine 20 years from now, we'll be looking back at 2024, and it'll be 2044, and it'll be wholly different. It'll be astronomically different than what it is now. Who knows? But it's crazy to think about what a $1,400 computer back then, it had like a 10 megabyte hard drive or something like that, or 500 megabyte hard drive, and now 500 gigabytes is low to us. To now we need a terabyte. It would almost be like having 1 terabyte now or 2 terabyte hard drive, and then it's a tetrabyte 10 years from now or something.
It's crazy.
But I don't really have, I'll see if I have any more hot takes than that, or if you can think of any other ones. We're near the end of the episode anyways.
Yeah.
No, I did all the ones I thought of for the episode.
Yeah, but I think they were hot takes that weren't like gonna get us in trouble.
Weren't any, or
I don't think there are.
No. I think that people might disagree, and that's okay. And people might
even but we're used to that.
And people might be mad even, like some of them. They're going to be extra mad about the RC Cola one. Not really.
I don't think they're even going to be mad about the Legend of Zelda one.
They're not going to be mad about the Breath of the Wild and the Tears of the Kingdom one. I just hope
I'm going to get so many unsubscribes.
I just hope the next Zelda game, because the one with Zelda in it, just Echoes of Wisdom just doesn't seem that good.
We go again, full circle.
Full circle. That just doesn't seem good to me at all. It reminds me of Link to the Past in terms of the camera angle and stuff, but I don't know all that much about it, though, so I could be completely wrong. I'm trying to keep an open mind about that one. But I do hope one day, that's one of the other things, too, is people say, oh, you should have an art style versus the fully 3D realism. That art style matters, and I think even though Twilight Princess was more of a gritty, realistic Zelda, and it was darker, it had darker themes in it, and that's one of the many things I liked about the game, it still had an art style to it, even though it was more gritty and more realistic, whereas the newer ones are more kiddish in a way, not as gritty and as dark as the older games were. But I think a photorealistic Zelda would be amazing.
Oh, that would be cool.
In the future. And people say, oh, photorealistic games are always going to look dated 5 or 10 years after it. And so far, the technology has been true with that. But I do think eventually we'll get to a point where you can still have art style and stuff like that, but have it be very realistic and very immersive. And there's some VR mods for Ocarina of Time, and I could only imagine a VR Zelda game would be amazing to do. That would be so fun. But I can't think of any more hot takes for this episode, and I'm sorry it was kind of lopsided where I had a bunch more, but
that's all right. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next podcast.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for watching.